Hi, it's me, Gabe, over here from Advanced Test Equipment Corp. And today we're going to be going over EMC Partner's new DOW-CG1. Now, this generator is specially intended for IEC 61004-18, 61004-10 magnetic field testing, and also a 1.2 by 50 microsecond half a joule impulse test. This generator has a built-in 3-phase 32 amp CDN, but you could also do direct output tests using the direct output ports. And optionally, you have this magnetic field antenna for the 4-10 testing. Here you'll have the slow damped oscillatory waveform menus, which can go up to 100 kilohertz and 1 megahertz. And you can go up to 5 kV. For the fast damped oscillatory waveform, we can go 3 megahertz, 10 megahertz, and 30 megahertz, and up to 4.4 kV. For the magnetic field, we use the 100 kilohertz and 1 megahertz impulses, and we can get about 220 amps per meter within the coil. And here is the option for the half a joule, 8,000 volt, 1.2 by 50 microsecond pulse. Keep in mind that this generator has a built-in 3-phase 32 amp coupler decoupler CDN, so that's a really nice feature. It also has direct output, so you could use other couplers or direct testing. And if you have to do magnetic field testing, the MF1000-1 is the magnetic field coil that's about 1 meter size. So in this video, we're going to dive in the front, rear panels, the standard accessories, and how to actually perform the test within the menus. Now we're going to take a look at the front panel of our DOW-CG1. So you're going to have the colored touchscreen here. You're going to have this test start and pause button, the stop button, the rotary knob that you can click. You're going to have the emergency stop knob. You're going to have the direct output for the slow damped oscillatory waveform and the half a joule voltage impulse direct outputs here. You're going to have the on-off switch. You're going to have a USB port where you could get test sequences, firmware updates, all that good stuff. You have an external interface connection, so you could hardwire auxiliary equipment to this. And then you have 4 in and output ports where you could either have them as voltage references, trigger outputs. You'll have a trigger output here. You're going to have a 5-wire connection for the AC input here for our built-in CDN. Your circuit breaker fuse for the AC ports. You're going to have your DC input power connections. And then here's going to be your EUT power connections where you could essentially superimpose the waveform onto this, and this will be connected to your device under test. You're also going to have the direct output for the fast damped oscillatory waveforms here, and a grounding connection on the bottom. Now let's look at the back of the equipment. And now we're looking at the back of our DOW unit. So the main thing is you're going to have the AC single phase input to power on the device here. You'll have an on-off circuit breaker here. You're going to have an auxiliary connector where you could put in the interlock connector, or you could wire an external safety light or external safety equipment. And then you're going to have several control interfaces, RS-485, USB, Ethernet, and you're going to have 2 more BNC ports where you could program them as different inputs or outputs. And now we're going to look at the standard accessories that we supply with the generator. First, you're going to have an interlock connector that's going to get attached to the back of the instrument so you could allow you to start testing. You're going to have 2 sets of yellow and red alligator clips with test leads that you can connect to the direct output port if you want to test your device without a CDN. You're going to have 5 leads to power on the device through the 5-port 3-phase CDN input power. You're going to have a shoring adapter where you could use to connect the CDN output port to its ground connection. That way you can do a self-verification before testing to ensure everything's working. We're gonna have an Ethernet cable to communicate to the network and a single phase AC power cord to power on our generator. So now that we went over the front and rear panels, we're gonna turn on our DOW-CG1. One of the nice features about this system is it has a color touchscreen, but it also has an adjustment wheel that you could click into the menus if you'd like. Once the main menu comes on, it's going to highlight all the modules you have installed in your system. We can go over all of them really quickly here. So the most common is going to be the slow damped oscillatory waveform, which will output the 100 kilohertz and the 1 megahertz impulse up to 5 kV. The second is going to be the fast damped oscillatory waveform, which is the 3, 10, and 30 megahertz impulse, but you're limited to about 4,400 volts for it. The third is the magnetic field test, which you're going to use the 100 kilohertz and 1 megahertz waveform, and you're going to send it to an optional magnetic coil and stand that you'll need to do the magnetic field tests, and you could get about 220 amps there. And the fourth test is the half a joule up to 8,000 volt 1.2 by 50 voltage insulation test, which has a 500 ohm output impedance. Once we're in one of the particular waveforms, I'll go through some of the basic features that you could adjust here. So the first one is the frequency, whether it's the 100 kilohertz to 1 meg. I'll leave it at 1 megahertz here, and then it has a nice graphic description of the waveform. You could adjust the test level, which right now I'm at 2000, but I could raise it to full power at 4400 volts. I could change the level ramp, so I could ramp it up or ramp it down. I'll just turn that off for our demonstration. And you could also adjust the polarity, changing from positive to negative. And I'll just leave it at 5 seconds. You'll flip over. The next thing is if I go to the time menu, you could adjust the test time, the burst repetition, burst duration, the pulse spacing, and how you want it to trigger, whether it's a manual, external, or automatic. Also, when it comes to the syncing, you could change the part of the waveform that you want synced on there, or you could even customize a ramping of the phase that you're superimposing the impulse on. And I'll just turn that off here. And the next one is going to be the coupling. So each DOW-CG1 has a 3-phase, 5-wire coupler decoupler that works up to about 32 amps per wire. You can use it up to 690 volts line to line, which is about 400 volts line to neutral. And it also does DC coupling and decoupling. Right now I have it set to send the impulse to the CDN, but I could use the direct outputs. There's going to be 3 of them on the front panel: the slow, the fast, and the voltage half a joule waveform for the insulation test. But I'll just keep mine at the built-in CDN here. And then within the CDN, you could actually change the coupling path, which right now we have line 1, 2, 3, and neutral exiting out of the ground. But I could just change it to line 1 to neutral, for example. And there's a whole bunch of options here for you. So with this, I'm actually going to go try to set up a test for us, and we can see it on the scope here. So I'm going to change the level to about 2000 volts. And then when I'm ready to impulse and I have everything connected, I'll hit the green start button. And the test has begun. Now, if I stop the test or pause it, I could go into the menus and and see some details to get reported to the memory stick to export later. Now for this next kind of demonstration, I'm going to go into the fast damped oscillatory waveform. And from here I could change the 3, 10, and 30 megahertz, which commonly used for IEC 61004-18 testing. I'll leave it at 30 megahertz here, and I could change the output level up to 4400 volts. So let's do that now. And same thing, just like with the slow, you could change the level ramp, the polarity. You could change the timing of your tests and the burst repetitions and how much you want each burst spaced out. The phase syncing and how you want it coupled or decoupled. So now we'll go back to level, and I'll set it also at 2000 volts, and we'll pull it up here on the scope so you can see it here. So I'm going to hit start. Pause and stop the test. Now I'm going to go to the main menu again and go to the magnetic field test, which we'll have to connect our magnetic coil. We're going to be using the MF1000-1 today. You could adjust the field output level, you could adjust the frequency, leave it at 1 megahertz here. The timing of your impulse, and this is how you're going to have it connected to your coil. And finally, let's go through the menu. Now let's go to the half a joule impulse test. So from here you can change it from fixed to free mode. You can change the output level up to 8 kV and the polarity from positive to negative. And you could flip around the polarities. You could also change the different number of pulses, the repetition rate, and even pulse measurements. So let's just have it at let's do just 2000 volts again. And we're gonna do 1000 pulses up every 5 seconds, and leave the trigger mode as automatic. So I'll hit start here. So I'm going to stop the test now. And other things within the generator, you can go into the menu here and you can adjust the setups of the generator and create different files for that. You can build test sequences. You can have reports that you could export and you could print out for your customers. This is how you manage the firmware updates. Different settings as far as the IP address for network, the audio settings, which language and date format, and some other settings. This is where you can see what extensions you have equipped and licenses. And this is where it detects the power going into the CDN. And if you program any specific function, so for example, this BNC port, you could go into here and you could program it to be a trigger input, emergency stop, emergency fail, UT mark, start, stop. And if there's any questions, feel free to reach out to us at Advanced Test Equipment at www.atecorp.com. Talk to you soon.